Could Tyreek Hill be traded this offseason and specifically be dealt to the Baltimore Ravens? Well, on today's show, we're going to break down that possibility because Bleacher Report suggested and had a trade idea for Tyreek Hill to land in Baltimore this offseason. And before we get into all of that, make sure you do follow me over on Twitter at Nic_Rohloff because I talk Dolphins news and rumors every day over there. And if a Tyreek Hill trade happens or more information comes out about Tyreek Hill wanting a trade, we'll have you covered over there before we make a YouTube video. So follow me at Nic_Rohloff. All right, I know the Tyreek Hill trade rumors have kind of quieted down over the last 3, 4, 5 days, if you will. But I still think he could be traded because no matter what is getting put out there, what Drew Rosenhaus said late last week on the Pat McAfee show still is kind of sitting with me a little bit. And it's hard for me to shake the quotes that he dropped. And I wanted to revisit them for you if you missed them last week. Rosenhaus initially said, when asked about Tyreek Hill, he's committed to this Dolphins football team. He had an excellent meeting with Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel after the weird trade request comments following Week 18. He's the least guy people should be worried about for this organization. All right, cool. Sounds like Tyreek Hill's going to stay. Not even 15, 20 minutes later, he said this on the same show when asked about if Tyreek Hill wants to be in Miami. I've got to have that conversation with Tyreek. I'm not going to speak for him. I'm not going to say he does or he doesn't. What? It's a confusing situation, man. And that's why I still think a Tyreek Hill trade could go down. You hear the reports of Chris Greer, Mike McDaniel, and Tyreek having a productive meeting after the initial trade request. And then you hear Rosenhaus say that. And Tyreek Hill has yet to backtrack his comments personally. If he just put out a statement saying, yeah, man, heat of the moment type thing. I just was upset how the game played out against New York. I was upset how the season played out. We missed the postseason. I was pissed. I didn't mean anything I said. He says that on social media. Everything I think could be forgiven and we can move forward having Tyreek Hill as a mainstay of this Dolphins future. But then he hasn't done that. You hear the news and stuff about players being late to meetings, them getting fined, but then still showing up late and the fine's not working. Like, it just feels like a disaster. I feel like it was a subtle shot at Tyreek Hill. I can't confirm nor deny if Tyreek was one of those guys late to team meetings getting fined repeatedly. But it is a murky situation in the 305, which still leads me to believe that Tyreek Hill could be traded. So I want you to predict it for me. Will Tyreek Hill be traded? It's not what you think should happen. What do you think will happen? Type T if you think he's dealt. Type K if you think he's ultimately kept. All right, let's get into the talk about the Baltimore Ravens now because Maurice Moton of Bleacher Report said that if the Dolphins prefer to move on from Hill rather than keep him with the chance that he eventually requests another trade, they could demand a second-round pick for him. If healthy, Hill is still one of the best wide receivers in the league. In recent years, the Baltimore Ravens have been aggressive on the trade market. If the Ravens fall short of a Super Bowl appearance, they could be a strong suitor for a receiver on the trade market. And when you just take away Miami's side of it, Tyreek Hill in Baltimore would be a lot of fun. And yes, they have made a very conservative and aggressive effort to surround Lamar Jackson with adequate pass catchers. Zay Flowers drafted in the first round. He's been great. Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely, Rashad Bateman. If they lose to Buffalo this upcoming Sunday in the divisional round, after Lamar Jackson has yet what could be another MVP season, maybe they say, all right, we clearly need more weapons on the outside to help really add to our offense, and they call up Miami for a potential Tyreek Hill trade. And in this trade rumor, this trade idea from Bleacher Report with the Baltimore Ravens, the Miami Dolphins would net a 2025 second-round pick, which I have a lot of thoughts on this trade package that Miami would receive in this projected trade from Baltimore that we'll get into after we tell you about today's sponsor, that is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the #1 daily fantasy sports platform. It's so easy to play. All you do is pick more or less on 2 players or more for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. cash. And as the playoffs roll on, it's now or never. Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. Prize Picks also puts their members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, which I did just hit a nice little entry over the weekend on Wild Card Football, I got my money in as quick as 15 minutes. Think Lamar Jackson will have more than 250 passing yards this week? How about Mahomes more than 1.5 touchdowns? Cook up your hot takes with your friends and win real money this football season when you and your crew run your game on Prize Picks. And you can go professional football, you can go collegiate football. I'm looking at the national championship game more than on a free entry. Shout out to Prize Picks for offering a free entry on Will Howard, more than half a passing yards. I'll pair that up with less than on Riley Leonard and Jeremiah Smith, respective passing yards and receiving yards for a nice little 3-player entry here. You can combine different sports, different leagues. You can do everything you want over on Prize Picks. So download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. One more time, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you place your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, as we get back to the potential trade compensation if the Miami Dolphins ultimately made a deal with the Baltimore Ravens or any trade in this offseason, I think this is the best package you would get. Just flat out, a pure straight up second-round pick is as good as it would get for the Miami Dolphins. When you contemplate and factor in his age, he's now on the plus side of 30, 31 years old, his contract where he's getting paid $28, $30+ million per season, and all of the off-the-field diva-type comments and issues you have to deal with, I think a second-round pick is as good as it would get. If it was 3 years ago, yes, you would get a first-round pick just like what Miami offered to Kansas City to get him in the 305. But where we currently stand, a second-round pick would be great. I would actually expect if the Dolphins traded Tyreek Hill for it to be a combination like of a conditional third-round pick that can get to a second, or a third-round pick and a fourth-round pick, third and a fifth-round pick, something like that. But I also want to make this abundantly clear. When you talk about a Tyreek Hill trade, you see that number and year next to the second-round pick, 2025? Yeah, that would not happen. A trade with the Miami Dolphins with Hill is not going to be becoming before June 1st. Why is that the case? Well, let's look at some contract details of Tyreek Hill. He has a $27.7 million cap hit in 2025 if he's on the roster. So if he's playing for the Dolphins, that's what you're paying him. It's a bigger cap hit if the Dolphins traded him before June 1st. It goes up $0.6 million to $28.3. So if a trade happened for the Dolphins, where they got a 2025 second-round pick, the Dolphins would still be on the hook for $28.3 million against the cap. The reason why I don't think that's possible is because look at the difference, folks. It's a $12.7 million cap hit in 2025 if he's traded after June 1st, and then he's under contract through 2026. So if Tyreek Hill is traded, it would happen after June 1st, because Miami is not going to pay a player $28.3 million to not play for them, especially when they are already up against the cap. It would be front office malpractice. I don't care if it nets you a second-round pick in this year's draft. This draft is not even that good to begin with to take on that contract just to get a second-round pick in this draft. I would rather do a trade that gets you a third in 2026 and a fifth in 2026 just to save the $16 million that you would in a trade. It makes no sense for the Dolphins to deal Tyreek Hill before June 1st, so I do not think a trade in this capacity would happen. But let me know your thoughts. Knowing the cap situation, would you accept this trade? And factor that in. Obviously, if it was straight up no money, it has to be thought about at all. I'm hitting my A's for accept. But knowing that the Dolphins would pay Tyreek Hill $28 million if he's not on the roster, are you accepting this trade or are you waiting for post-June 1st? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. If you cannot tell, I am not doing it. And it's specifically for the financial reasons, right? Why on earth would the Dolphins, who need a lot of help at the wide receiver position and as a overall roster, trade someone, pay them $28 million to not play for you? It makes absolutely no sense for the Dolphins to do that. But let's talk about this for a second. If the Dolphins did want to move off of Tyreek Hill, or just in general, wanted to add to this wide receiver room, and they knew they were going to trade Tyreek Hill post-June 1st, here are some NFL draft options for the Fins that I am looking at. And just by the way, these are all guys that would be after the first round, so either in the second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round, in the second to fourth, fifth round range. There's some interesting names on here. I really like Trey Harris from Ole Miss. He's got good size, he's got good speed, and most of the players on this list are good in size and stature because I'm looking for someone to be helpful in the red zone. Nick Nash was one of the best wide receivers out of San Jose State. He's 6'4", 6'5". Pat Bryant from Illinois is a personal favorite of mine. He's 6'3". Savion Williams from TCU, gadget guy, had about 650 receiving yards as well as 300 rushing yards. He's 6'5". So I'm looking at big-bodied wide receivers that can be red zone threats, but also make things happen after the catch with the ball in their hands. And even if the Dolphins do not trade Tyreek Hill, or if they do trade Tyreek Hill, it simply doesn't matter to me. The Dolphins should be looking to draft a wide receiver in the middle rounds of the draft to help in the red zone because the Dolphins struggled in the red zone all year long. They couldn't run inside the 5, inside the 10-yard line, and I think some of their passing game struggled as well. It led to a lot of screens to Jonnu Smith and Devon Achane, which is fine. Those two dominated in their roles this year, but it would be helpful to be able to trust a guy in a contested catch situation, in a back shoulder fade type of thing. Well, you don't have to solely rely on speed and scheme, but just say, hey, go win your matchup. Dolphins do not have that at the wide receiver position. And regardless if Hill is on the team or not, they should try to address this in free agency, signing a fourth veteran wide receiver with size, or using a pick in the draft. They have 10 of them projected. Why not use one of them on a big-bodied wide receiver in the middle rounds? All right, that will do it for today's episode of Dolphins Today. We will be back later with another episode on the channel, so make sure you subscribe. We're dropping 2 videos on a daily basis. We'll have you covered on everything from trade rumors, news, coaching stuff as well. Make sure you subscribe for the best coverage on YouTube.